Hello and welcome. My name is Oliver Geider and I'm the Executive Director of EuroCrowd. This webinar is organized on behalf of CrowdIP, an initiative supported by the European Union Intellectual Property Office, or short EU-IPO. As you may know, crowdfunding has become a popular method for businesses to raise capital, and ensuring the protection of their ideas and rights is crucial in this process. We are delighted today to welcome three founders and managers of crowdfunding platforms as speakers. Christopher Gratz, CEO and founder of Investor Group, Nora Shelesh, co-founder of tokeportal.com, and Carlo Alevi, director and co-founder of We Are Starting. Today we have an exciting topic on our agenda: the importance of intellectual property, commonly known as IP. As entrepreneurs navigating the landscape of crowdfunding, understanding the significance of IP is paramount. To shed light on this crucial aspect, our speakers will share insights, experience, and suggestions. We aim to provide you with a deeper understanding and why delving into this topic is essential for your entrepreneurial journey. Thank you for joining today, and welcome Nora, Christopher, and Carlo. Today in our series on intellectual property within CrowdIP, we want to discuss in general the importance of IP for startups. And in particular, of course, your experience and your work that you perform on your crowdfunding platforms with these startups. I would like to start with maybe one question each of you can answer. What we find interesting is, how do you, on your crowdfunding platform, emphasize the importance of IP to startups when they're coming to you to seek funding? Who wants to start? Christopher.
Yeah, I can start. Thank you for having us. Yeah, obviously IP is an important topic. I think when we talk about crowdfunding, we often talk about early stage companies that you can invest in. So when we look at a company, it normally has around about 500K in revenue and is active in the market. But we also have companies in the field of medtech and deep tech and clean tech, where companies are often even pre-revenue because they need to develop a lot of technology. And yeah, doing a proper due diligence obviously includes looking at the IP rights, right? And that is something we emphasize from the beginning on, depending on industry, depending on market. It's a discussion that we have quite closely with the companies to look into what type of product do they have, in what way did they secure it against competition, especially if you are in an innovative and competitive field. Where do you have your patent rights? Where do you have your IP rights, from brand through procedures? All topics that we discuss with companies in the due diligence process. And especially decline companies that don't have that. So if we look into very innovative models that are not yet on that track, we normally connect them within the network and ask them to come back for retail investors to be invested in at a stage where they have their patents in place. So highly important from my perspective, something we can obviously deep dive on, but I don't want to have as a monologue, so maybe lead over to the others.
Very good. Carlo?
Yeah, I quite agree with Christopher. It is really the same for us. Probably Italy has a startup ecosystem that still need to grow significantly. So we also experience the fact that startups often need a bit of support to, especially in their earlier stages of life, to understand the importance of IP. Of course, IP is one of the topics we focus on when we evaluate companies, and when they see that this is deemed as very important, they realize probably that this is something that is really crucial for investors. So we really see that companies typically have a growth path in terms of IP protection, and it's actually very good to see this happening. In general, we do not have like a specific plan to support companies with regards to this, but we are really keen to interact with them and help them improve on these topics.
Thank you. Nova, you have something to add?
Yes, we definitely are very much keen on the IP protection, as crowdfunding is a sort of venture capital, and so actually investors do invest in the IP of the company, whether it's protected or not, and they should be absolutely be certain that the IP is as much protected as possible in the investee company. So what we do first is the preview of the campaign inquiry. Among a 6-step review is carried out, among which an IP check is included within the legal audit. That's what we call, and we produce out of this 6-step audit a scorecard in which a legal expert reviews the IP status of the company, and it's not prohibited to launch the campaign until the IP is protected, but the founders, the company, the target company, shall report over progress of its IP protection until the end of the campaign, which in our case lasts yet 6 to 8 or 10 weeks, because we are yet a small platform. With however, we have already closed a good couple of campaigns successfully, but we are trying to implement the best process possible, but that is not yet deterring funders to launch campaigns, not to set the entry barriers too high, but in order to protect investors on the long term, they shall meet these criteria. So there is a pre-campaign review, and then during the campaign, until they can get to the capital, because the capital of the investors is deposited with the custodian account, until the capital is released from the account, they must prove sufficient progress in this question as well. And of course, it differs from campaign owner to campaign owner, as also Christopher mentioned. It also depends on the segment or the industry, etc. So an in-depth progress is being at least launched during the campaign, and the investors must be made aware of the status of the IP protection in order to be able to decide for the investment consciously. So they must make an informed decision before investing, also including the status of the IP protection of that particular campaign owner.
Thank you, Nova. Christopher, you cut yourself a bit short. I mean, do you also have a particular process that you apply, or?
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, we finance over 1,000 companies, right? So it really depends on, and we're in different regions. So it really depends on the status of the company, the area of the company, the industry the company is from. So IP is especially important, as I said, if we talk about deep tech or medtech companies. So we have clear processes in place to check, is the brand, are the procedures secured in their national environment? So let's say if we finance a Finnish company, do they have the IT and the IP and patent right in Finland? Do they file for it in Europe? Then we also obviously look into the case that companies want to fund growing or growth funding rounds with us, where they potentially also expand. Then we also look into these things. Is there a double registration? Do we have a process that the patent is also registered in the US, etc. But as I said, it highly depends on the type of company, because on the other hand, I think there are also companies we can finance through crowdfunding. They're not necessarily the owners of the IP. So sometimes you obviously also have sales companies that bring a certain IP right into the market. So then IP maybe takes a bit of a lower role. But these are then normally companies where the asset is not necessarily sort of the asset in the books of the company, the IP, the procedure, etc. But the asset is more the market access and the sales approach that they have. But also then we obviously look into how secure are contracts, how long term is it secure that a company can use a certain patent or sell a certain product that is IP'd in their markets, etc. So this is, I think, something we highly look at. Maybe to add on that.
May I just interrupt?
Yeah.
Because you talked about IP now with regard to patents. But when you look at a sales company, you may have trademark protections or other forms of intellectual property. Do you also look at these aspects?
Yeah, we also look into that, and we also especially look how protected that is from also from an access perspective, right? If you work, especially if you're a smaller company and you work with larger wholesalers in your market, how good is your brand protected? How good is your source code also protected? How clear is that product can be sold? So those are topics that are really that we look at. We have a network of normally then external advisors helping us next to our internal due diligence team. So branch specific, industry specific, we look into this. But again, especially for companies where it highly depends on that asset, where the company is very, very early stage and it gets a bit less at a later stage. What we, on the other hand, see is that the main problem with companies is the knowledge on how to even get there. Right. And that's especially with early stage companies. I think that's also what Carlo said, and what Carlo meant is that you have a young company coming to you with a great idea, with maybe local IP protection in the country and the area, not thinking about, okay, if this company works out, I want to bring that product throughout Europe, into the US, into China, Asia, wherever. So what we do at a very early stage is also connecting these companies within our network. So we don't have our own IP experts in-house, but we bring the companies very early stage to lawyers, to explain to platforms where they get educational material on how to get there.
Okay, very good. Does any of you have an example? I mean, you don't have to name the name, but maybe a campaign we say, this is where IP played actually a really big role in your portfolio?
Yeah, maybe I can talk about one of the cases we faced. It was a startup that was just established, very, very early stage, and they had this patent and this trademark related to a specific product. It was a building material company, basically. And it was for a very specific niche. And the description of this product, patented product, was the core of the campaign. Even it was what was attracting investors. At the time in Italy, there was a lot of attention on energy efficiency for the renovation of buildings. And it worked. They started manufacturing and selling the product. The interesting thing is that they already had other products in mind. I think I can also explore other niches, but I don't have the resources to do that. And it's quite common, as we were saying. So the amount raised not only was used to expand the first business they identified, but they were also able to create new IP rights. And it was very interesting because this company had 3 crowdfunding offerings, and in the next round they had 2 more patents and then 2 more. So it was like a positive feedback in terms of IP.
Very good, thank you. Nora or Christopher, you have an outstanding example you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, we have financed a variety of companies. Again, in the medtech area, a company Askel Health, for example, is a company that we financed in Finland. They work on an innovative repair mechanism for cartilage defects in your knee. Finance a company called Next Kidney, where we raised around about 5 million, that has a home dialysis machine where people can take that home on a portable basis. So I think medtech is one area. But then also in our other areas, a Finnish company called Woodley that produces 100% plastic, but made out of wood. So a new type of plastic, which is patented. Company that we're now going to finance is also interesting from an IP perspective. It's a company called Loop. They make coffins out of mushrooms, so environmentally friendly coffins, where the company that has patented the mushroom, basically the mycelium technology, that can grow into whatever. So that is an American company with the patent on that. Loop itself has got the exclusive right to use that to then, on the other hand, produce these coffins that they have patented themselves, the growing method, the way how to make them for the European market and sell them there. So there are various examples. Ocean Vault, a company with electric motors for sailing boats with 5 patents all over the world. So I think it's something where, especially in an early stage company, it's necessary to have that in place, to look at it, to really be sure a company can grow and can keep the assets, because it's the core bit that they have normally at the books, or on the books at early stages.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Maybe just to wrap up, there's always, if you have a IP protection, be it a trademark or IP, it doesn't mean that you can't be touched, right? That you're safe. It just means that you have the right to defend yourself. Something that nobody hopes to encounter. But when you work with your companies or startups and you discuss their value and their potential IP protection that they may have or may seek, how much are you able, or do you have any process already to point them towards, actually defending their right in case there is an infringement of these rights later on? It's certainly on a crowdfunding platform where we have a public offering, where a lot of information is in the public, that can become quite interesting. Do you do this already or not yet?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. Maybe we have a few risk mitigation processes sort of in place. So there are obviously companies out there that keep an eye for you on your patent, or on your brand. We ourselves work with a company like that. So we once in a while get a hint that somewhere in Asia the brand is used or something. We used that label One Planet Crowd. So there's sometimes brand infringements where you need to agree on, and based on that experience, that we can outsource that to law firms that do nothing else than looking into infringements around the world, and that give you a hint when something goes wrong. This is something we work with and recommend that to companies where IP protection is essential and necessary. We already recommended a few insurance companies to be insured against infringement, etc., when we felt it's highly important. But even on top of that, within the process in the beginning, what we also look at, I mean, sometimes companies have IP protection for products where we ask ourselves the question, if I want to copy it, how fast could I copy it? Because there's one thing that is IP protected, but the second thing is like, how fast would a competitor in a market where IP rights are not so fought for to copy the product? So that's a third layer of risk mitigation on our end, to really look into, let's say, furniture. If you have furniture and you have a certain IP on a design, it's tricky. It gets more emotional than rational, right? And that's where we like medtech companies more, or deep tech companies, knowing that they have researched on this for 7 years, 8 years, went through different studies, so it's not as easy to copy. So there's also this layer from our end on IP rights.
Carlo, Nora, you have to add something?
Just one, we are doing very similar things, as this is about the same market, actually. So these are absolutely make sense to replicate all these processes at each of the platforms. What we do, we have a service called the Mentor platform, where we collect and profile mentors consisting of 60 industry experts. Christopher also just said that they have, of course, a partnership network of industry experts, and among them they are not only lawyer firms but also IP specialists. Danubia is the largest Hungarian IP specialist advisor, and they have been here ever since, for decades. And there is a session with this IP experts right before launching the campaigns. And then we hope that because IP protection is a very special area, even within law, I myself have to admit that I really very scarcely understand about that. Of course, I recognize if something needs to be IP protected, or the same questions are familiar with us, like Christopher just mentioned, that design and software, etc., are very hard to protect, or even if impossible. So we a little bit understand ourselves about IP, but we do have the contracted experts who have this mission, and this can as be regarded as a sort of outsourcing, as also Christoph had just mentioned. So we are aware of this problem and trying to put as much emphasis as it's possible, and getting more and more knowledgeable about that. We have not yet concluded 1,000 campaigns, but we will once. So by that time, we will be also much more experienced in this subject matter as well.
Thank you. Carlo, in the interest of time, if you can make it short.
We share the same approach, basically. So we have external experts we can get involved. Of course, it depends on the need to protect. In some cases, it is crucial. In some cases, it is nice to have. And it depends on the willingness of the issuer, of course.
Thank you very much. We would like to thank you for joining us today for CrowdIP, and we hope to see you again another time. Please check out our website at eurocrowd.org for more resources and info on IP and crowdfunding, and also, of course, the website of EU IPO. And if you're interested in crowdfunding, why not visit the platforms of our speakers? Goodbye.